Hi everyone, it's Elaine Guinn. Welcome to In Your Neighborhood in Bloomington, Indiana. And today I'm in the Sherwood Oaks neighborhood with Kevin Bruce. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi. Um, and Kevin and I were in a story together. And so it's a recovery story that was written in Bloom magazine by Carmen Searing. And just as recent as the last couple of weeks, Carmen received an award. This article was the best feature story in all of Indiana, and we were pretty impressed. She got an award. She got 3 awards that day actually, and you'll hear more about that in Bloom magazine soon. But Kevin and I thought we would discuss a little bit about why we decided to participate in this recovery story, what drew us to do that, and why we kind of outed ourselves as far as that we're both in recovery. And so yeah, Kevin, would you like to share a little bit about your?
Well, I would. I do. I'm in I can actually say I've recovered from alcoholism, but we say I'm in recovery, and of course I could fail at any given moment and relapse, but I don't believe it's going to happen because I like my sobriety. I love my sobriety more every single day. On top of that, my family likes it a whole lot more than I do even, and I feel like that's enough validation for staying away. I've got 9 years as of May 2nd from alcohol, and it has very sad effects on society as a whole, on the health of individuals, and then in general, there's just too much that comes along with it. I feel like our country anyway needs some kind of revival, and it ought to be spiritual, and it ought to hit all the areas that are right now, I would say, needing an upgrade. And there are so many addictions going on that actually I got asked to join the board of directors of Amethyst House in Bloomington, and it's been a privilege to be there. You know, only the few months I've been there. We only moved to Bloomington 2.5 years ago, so we're new, but it's just great to be here.
So that brought up another thought, just thinking about what you said. So I thought I would share a little bit about myself and like why I participated in it. So I was in a public community meeting several years ago. I think it was in 2012 or 13, somewhere around there, and there were a lot of people discussing various recovery programs, and there were people who were putting down specific programs. And someone stood up, and I won't name names, but someone stood up and said, hey, I happen to be in this program and have been for over 30 years. And I was like, wow, what a badass. She just like totally put everybody in their place. And interestingly enough, 2 years later, that is the person that I called when I hit rock bottom.
Wow.
That I had been drinking too much wine, and I felt that it was becoming a problem in my life, and that my life was becoming unmanageable. And so I picked up the phone and called that specific person. And so the reason that I participated in the recovery story, I had only been sober for a year at that point. I'm coming up on year 2. And so a lot of people were like, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, well, yeah, this makes me accountable more to my community. A lot of, sure, relapse is possible, and, people can go back out and then they're like, oh, you were in this, that's part of it. And I feel like, part of my little section of the article, and if you want to find it, it's online, Bloom magazine, and just type in recovery and you'll find it. And it's an amazing article. Obviously, it won the best feature story in Indiana because it's the best writer, which is my friend Carmen. And so, the thing that I was passionate about is changing the stigma. Instead of saying, you have some moral failing, or you're bad, there's something wrong with you, or it's, of course this would happen to you. Of course you would become an alcoholic. Look at the things that happened in your life, or look at genetics, or there's so much more than just genetics today, and especially you mentioned other addictions. I mean, there's just so much more. And I'm trying to raise awareness to ask people to ask what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you, and asking why the pain instead of why the addiction. And so that's why I felt so passionate about putting myself out there, that I wanted to spread that message, and that's a message I'm still on a mission about, as you can tell in my conversation. But what about you? What was your motivation?
I had
your
a
story?
lot of the same feelings and still do.
And we've both gotten positive feedback from our community, and
the only thing I can say you left out is to mention Malcolm Abrams, the
yes,
editor-publisher of that magazine.
yes,
Is
our
a
friend
courageous. Yeah, he.
And
I
he's
mean, because it's the magazine isn't about addiction or
no.
problems or
This
social.
is a Bloomington magazine.
This
yeah.
is a very it's a very upscale, and it's what's amazing is when you read that magazine is what Bloomington has to offer us. For example, Carmen did an article, I think 2 months before ours, on the Muslim community here, which is strong and vital and vibrant. And you see the folks around, and we've gone to their open house. It was a wonderful experience. Those are things that that a magazine, that print media, video, anything like this can trigger something for someone to realize, oh, I'm like. But for me, I watched my father die of alcoholism, and we did not name it. It was not something one could discuss in the family. It was denial, it was deception, it was fear. There's fear, and we live with fear, and but that's where I should have right away said, what am I doing drinking? I had a little flask in my coat pocket at his funeral because it gave me a little numbness from the pain of losing a person I loved so dearly, and who gave so much to me.
Which is why the pain. I mean, it's a pain reliever.
Exactly.
And emotional pain and physical pain light up the same areas of your brain. And that's something that we have to look at, is that when someone is emotionally rejected, or they are emotionally abused, it is no different than being shot, stabbed. The part of your brain that is activated goes into survival mode. There are certain mechanisms in place to keep the body alive, and it literally is out of control. And for people to say you could just quit, or you could, there are varying levels, and that's something I did want to talk about. You were sharing a little bit of your story, and it's no secret. My dad has done a story with me. We've been in the news. My father was homeless for a total of 22 years. Street homeless at different times, and couch surfing, and he slept in sheds, and just all over the place. And I used that as my measure. At least I'm not that bad. At least I'm not that bad. And the thing is, I had been involved in a lot of different programs from a very young age. I had some exposure to it. And so when my drinking started to get where 2 bottles of wine should be enough for your average person. I mean, that should be well over enough. And the fact that I could put down 2 bottles of wine in 4 or 5 hours, and then needed more. That was at the very end, my last night, my last drink. I wanted more. And that was the next morning, was when I realized it got me. It got me. And I wasn't homeless. I didn't lose anything. I didn't get pulled over. I didn't have a DUI. My finances were getting a little tight, meaning I was juggling one bill. Like, I'll put that off and pay, double next month, that type of thing. But I could see that if I had continued one more day, if I had bought that next bottle of wine, I felt like the whole house of cards was going to come crumbling down. And I could have been pulled over. I could have lost my kids. I could have, it didn't, everybody gets on or off the line at a different point. And I think that that's important to, just because I quote unquote easily or had maybe a soft bottom, it doesn't mean that I'm not an alcoholic. It doesn't mean that I didn't have an issue. It doesn't mean that I didn't drink too much. Sorry, I need to correct my language there. It doesn't mean that I didn't have a problem, and I think that that's important to note, and that's also why I kind of wanted to have my story out there. So.
But when you're on the inside of that, you can't see what it had. walked in and saw that you had just finished 2 bottles of wine, I would have reminded you, you're not a pro football player. You're not a pro wrestler. You've actually gone, and you're doing that every day. And I could have said, oh, I think you're an alcoholic. Well, that's no help to anyone.
No, it's not.
We have all been there and realized, I can't go down the street grabbing people by the shirt outside Kilroy's and expect to do any good. In fact, I can do a lot of harm. I can even get myself into trouble. So there it is. You feel helpless, and yet someone says, would you like to tell your story? Well, I think I actually wouldn't mind a bit if somebody could hear the pain I lived through, fought through, overcame, was helped to deal with. And now I realize, life actually comes with pain.
Yep.
Nobody buys video games that you just win every little mouse click and keep winning right through to the end of the. Who's going to sit around all day just win, 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 win?
Right.
If there's no challenge, if there's no ups and downs, if there's no drama, it's not selling.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
And that is life. Life has some stress.
It has stress, and we are not, as a society, I think, still not helping our kids to realize that's the game. Our kids are now getting hooked on this little Juul, this little, vape system. I mean, it's
well, that, and all of the gaming and all of the phones, and I'm worried about kids' brains when it comes to that.
No.
I don't want to get too
Ritalin.
sidetracked.
I mean, there's just anyway.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but it's certainly an issue, and I am concerned that we have a group of kids that later will have addictions because of all of they're getting a hit.
That's it.
From their phones and from games and there is such a thing as technology addiction, and I think we need to raise awareness about that. And just on that point, us having this conversation, and just openly talking about it, it's important. And I do believe that we can touch people and change lives by having conversations and saying, hey,
there are groups all over this town that deal with addictions. I mean.
And not all of them are faith-based. I want to,
That's right.
I connect with a spiritual philosophy or a way of life, and I found something I connected with. So it's for everybody.
For us, when we lived in Ohio, and we found out we came here because my daughter got a job here, and we actually share the house with her and her husband, and they have a 6-year-old boy that we look after when they're both working. So it's a wonderful opportunity to be an extended family. But folks told us, oh, you're going to Bloomington, Indiana? Oh, you're so lucky. I'd never dreamed I'd be living in Indiana. I grew up in central Massachusetts and taught school in New York City. I mean, this was, to me, a remote idea. They said, oh, no, get involved in the Unitarian Universalist Church there, because they have people doing anything you can think of, and you'll find someone there who's doing what you might be interested in. Well, my wife, we do. We go there, and it's amazing. I mean, just to sit there and hear the music helps me stay happy, sober, recovering, joyful, free.
Being a part of a community.
Absolutely.
That's so important.
Absolutely. My wife got into a writer's group there. She goes every week. She writes something every week. She loves it, and I love hearing what she says. So
that's so awesome.
Bloomington
a part of a community.
It's an oasis.
And that kind of segues us into the next part of our episode, which is Bloomington itself. And what do you love about Bloomington? I ask a lot of people because this is in Bloomington, and I like to share our city here because I think it's amazing and wonderful. We do have our problems. I mean, we have a problem with homelessness, and we have a problem with some other things, and everybody wants to move here. So it's useful for people who are looking to learn about Bloomington. What do you love about Bloomington?
I love the volunteer opportunities, and one thing we did, we met the volunteer coordinator, Tamara Leventhal, who organizes Lotus Festival volunteers, and we do that every year, and that includes Lotus Blossoms for children at a school.
What's Lotus Fest, just for our viewers?
Lotus Fest,
I know all about it.
It's an international wonder. People come from many countries and present their music here, and there are full-time people in that organization working all year. It's named after Lotus Dickey, who was a local singer-songwriter, famous person, kind of a Will Rogers of Bloomington. I never met him, but I've heard a lot, and I believe it. And the folks come, and I drive. I pick them up at the Holiday Inn and drive them to the venue as a shuttle driver. They know I'm an Uber driver in my time off, so I do that for them, and I get to meet people from Israel, Canada, Pakistan, and
that's so awesome.
It's and you find out, well, Brazil, and you find out things that you never knew. And I think, for me, what I wish for all Americans is the chance to travel overseas, as Barbara and I did right out of college in 2 years in the Peace Corps. And I wish, in fact, I wish I had gone for a year somewhere before college. But if you don't do that, at least get into some kind of service opportunity and travel if you can, because
you learn a lot.
We have a round and amazing world, and it's becoming more amazing every day, and yet the problems are vast, and we need awareness in order to find sensible solutions. So that's and then I also volunteer at the Buskirk Chumley Theater. People, acts from, again, all over the place. And you don't have to sign up if it's not going to work for your weekend. But if it's a group you want to see, or an individual, you do it. And again, it's just a from where we were before. Yeah, this is wonderful.
Well, I think that's something like we're I feel like a close. There's so much you can do out in the community here,
right?
And a lot of people are involved. And one thing I love about Bloomington is, before I lived here, I lived in Avon, Indiana, and I'm originally from Indianapolis, and I was one of those moms that would drive through McDonald's, grab my kids something, and go home, on those rough nights, when you're doing soccer and swimming and all these different things.
Right.
And a lot of people do that. When I came here, I started changing my mind, because I would hear conversations, I would hear people say things like, well, if you buy local, that keeps all of the money in our community and not just 30%. And did you know it only takes 10 or 15 minutes to stop in somewhere and order food, and you can find some meals that are the same price as McDonald's at a local business.
That's right. And
support local business owners. And then I'm walking through Kroger one day, and there's this couple, a married couple, I assume, an older man and woman, and they're discussing, do you know if this is organic? And they're looking at this food, and they're like, maybe we can get that at the farmer's market, or they're looking for something. And you hear these conversations, and it rubs off. Because now I'm more aware of my community. I'm more aware of things. There's just this awareness about the community effort here in Bloomington and how we can all help each other. And so we do have a lot of nonprofits. We do have a lot of people trying to help others, and there are great volunteer opportunities. When I first moved here, I had a hard time finding work, and my suggestion for anybody having a hard time is volunteer. People get to know you. They get to know your skills.
That's what happens.
Volunteer in the community, and do that anywhere you go. If you are starting over, volunteer in the community. One last thought that I had, just a little history. So I took a class on Appalachia, or Appalachia, however you want to pronounce that, and it was talking about how the settlers came through these, more southern parts of Indiana. And actually, when you get south of Martinsville, there are hills down here, and it's beautiful. And there is all of this culture from the south that is here. There's a joke that when you're north of Indianapolis, it's Michigan. When you're south of Indianapolis, it's Kentucky. And I loved that, because it really has this bluegrass art, local, potters. There is this whole culture here throughout the southern, south, like the central part of southern Indiana that is really rich with history that has been passed down. There are weavers. These are things that settlers brought from other countries here.
That's
and
right.
even the music. And so I'm mentioning Lotus Dickey. I think it's amazing that that this is still around,
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to have Lotus Fest and to keep these traditions going and bring your kids out and expose them to it and yeah, I just want to throw that in.
I'm going to make one then quick.
Sure, we got a minute or so left, and
is
then
that I went on Netflix. I finished watching The Crown.
Yeah.
And it says you might enjoy watching David Letterman. My next guest is, and I did, and he interviewed George Clooney, who's from Augusta, Kentucky, and
I didn't know that.
And David Letterman is from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought he was from New York. I mean,
Yeah, no.
he had
He went to
he had the
Proverbial.
look.
He
and
was
the
from Indianapolis, like
Yeah.
from the heart of
But these two guys couldn't be more different, and yet they connect so strongly together because of their roots in
culture.
In this kind of culture here.
Mm-hmm.
And David Letterman goes to the home of Nick Clooney and his wife, whose name I forget. And it's just the most wonderful experience. They've adopted a guy who escaped from Iraq. He's a Yazidi who ran from the ISIS people and managed to get out and get shelter here and is in their home. And I mean, or in a home they provided for him. I mean, it's just a wonderful show, and it tells me again that we can get along with anyone if we have the right attitude.
Yeah, that's so true.
Life is a blessing.
Yeah.
I'm glad to do this with you, Elaine.
Well,
it's been a pleasure to know you.
Thanks for your time.
Get to know you. And
yeah.
You've helped me settle in here.
Oh, good.
So,
and, that's something that I just love to do. I love to meet people and I love to connect with people. And, but I wasn't always like that. When I got here, I had no friends. I had moved from another area, and I just one day decided to make friends. I need to be a friend.
That's it.
And I have so many friends, and sometimes people laugh and joke because I love to feed people. I love to share meals with people. I love to have tea. I love to connect, and because I feel passionate that we need to go backwards a little bit and have things like that. People need to date and go on dates and like eat meals together and bond and build trust, and because I feel like we're so disconnected. And so I thought, what, if those are my thoughts, I need to live that. That's why some people have asked me, why does Elaine do this, or why does Elaine buy my lunch, or I love to feed people because I'm giving you life for the day, and it doesn't matter if I cooked a meal or something. It's just something I'm passionate about, and I thought, if that's my personal philosophy, I need to share that and live that, and so that's just what I do. But on that note, thank you again for being on my show and taking time out of your busy day. I know you have to get on back to your life. So with that, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.